Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, as always, joined by Jay, and tonight we finish our little mini series with our water theme tonight. This would be what were the other ones? Just going back. Waterworld, the epic Waterworld last week, and before that, Dead Calm. So yes, this is our third and final, where the ocean is sort of a major character or setting, and this is 1984's The Bounty, which of course is based on a real life account of an actual mutiny that happened on a British ship in the 18th century, and they'd already made several movies before this one. Most notably, the two that were called Mutiny on the Bounty, one from, I think, 1935, and then its remake in 62. They're probably the better known ones. They had, at the time, good star power, and that 35, I think Clark Gable was in there. 62 was Marlon Brando. Now, this 84 one is not another remake. It's based on a different book than the other two were based on. It was based on what was the book called? The book was called Captain Bligh and Mr. Christian. So it's a slightly different account, and it seems to maybe be the most historically accurate. I don't know if we've done a historical period piece before, and I don't want to get too bogged down with everything about what all the differences and details and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a true story. All the main characters, everybody that's named was a real person. And I guess the thing that you would take away looking at it now in like 2018 is the cast. Because in 1984, they weren't necessarily all big names, but they would all become really big names. Anthony Hopkins was obviously an established actor by this time, but certainly not a star.
Right.
And certainly not, in North America at this point. He'd be a bit older before he really became a known commodity over here, probably with Silence of the Lambs really being the star-making tour. They win an award for him. Mel Gibson, will be a little quicker. This is kind of Mel Gibson just right on the edge of stardom, just before he would, because, the Mad Max movies, there were two of them at this point, but they were still, independent kind of cult movies. I don't think they were huge hits by any stretch of the imagination in their day. Like, I love The Road Warrior, and The Road Warrior's loved now, but I don't know if it was, it had that big of a following in the mid-'80s at this point.
Yeah, Road Warrior definitely more than Mad Max.
Sure. It was definitely successful, and it definitely got noticed, but still, I don't think Mel Gibson had quite arrived yet in this. And who else we got? Well, the big star is Sir Laurence Olivier, although he's only really at the start and in the end in a framing device there. But then you just have some other names in smaller roles that were unknowns at this point. Liam Neeson, of course, and Daniel Day-Lewis. So yeah, it's just one of those movies, and there's little collections of them, that have sort of like a big all-star cast before any of them are stars, kind of like something like the year before, a movie I like a lot, The Outsiders. The Outsiders, which would have a lot of guys that would go on to be leading men and big stars, but they're young and unknown at this point. This is a little different because they're not all that young. They're youngish, but not young. Liam Neeson, I'm not sure how old he would have been in this. Maybe 30, something like that.
Yeah, he looked quite young. Yeah, 28.
Okay, 28. There you go. Daniel Day-Lewis, I've never actually been clear on when he was born or what his age is. So, I don't know. Obviously, he's a young Daniel Day-Lewis, too. Everybody's younger. Anthony Hopkins, still in middle age in this, but a young Anthony Hopkins to most audiences. I've seen him younger in this. He was in a movie in the late 70s. I can't remember what it's called, where he's like it's like a horror movie type thing, almost like a thriller.
Oh, Magic.
Yes, Magic, that's right, where he's the ventriloquist, but he has a split personality that manifests itself in the dummy, which is, I always wondered if that was like the inspiration for the ventriloquist in Scarface, because they showed up in Batman, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s at the latest, but you know, they're not a classic Batman building that have been around a long time. They were introduced at least in the late 80s at the earliest. So I always wonder if that has a sort of similar idea to it. Well, actually a very similar idea, except that his has them like except with the case of the ventriloquist and Scarface, the personalities basically manifest themselves at the simultaneously, which is really interesting. But yeah, so I'd seen, but my point before I rambled on was that, yeah, I'd seen him youngish, and that's, you know, about 6 or 7 years before this movie. So this movie, another thing that's kind of interesting is the director is a director I know, Roger Donaldson, New Zealand-born director. He's done a fair amount of movies, and most of them I just don't like at all. The ones I've seen have been I'm very underwhelmed by a lot of them. You know, I saw The November Man a few years ago. There was nothing wrong with it. It was fine. Remember 13 Days was so boring, I think I just stopped after about halfway through. Species is a well-known movie, but it's a well-known terrible movie.
I've never liked Species, and it's the type of movie I should really like.
Yeah, it's in the wheelhouse of, you know, that kind of weird, over-the-top B-movie type thing, sci-fi, sure, but I never liked Species either. And I'll tell you one reason I don't like Species. It's an ugly, ugly movie.
Mm-hmm.
Everything looks like shit in that movie. I mean, Natasha Henstridge notwithstanding, she looks beautiful, but the rest of the movie, it just looks shit. And what's kind of surprising is how good this movie looks. But if you go back to the genesis of how this movie came to be, it makes a little more sense, because originally this had nothing to do with this director, Roger Donaldson, who was barely an established director at the time. This originally was a project of a much more well-known and celebrated director, David Lean, who, of course, had done some very big films like Bridge on the River Kwai and most notably Lawrence of Arabia. So this is something he'd been into since the late 70s. He was working on, and he got involved with Warner Brothers and Dino De Laurentiis, and various stuff happened, and it kind of fell through on him. And by this point, De Laurentiis had already invested a lot of money, and some stuff was already set up, and they needed a director. At this point, Mel Gibson was already attached, and Mel Gibson brought Roger in because they were friends.
Oh, really? Okay.
And that's how he got the gig. So that makes a little more sense.
I wonder how in the hell he knew Mel Gibson.
I don't know. He's from New Zealand. Mel Gibson's from Australia. They just all know each other. Yeah. No, I don't know, though. I haven't traced that back, but perhaps they'd work together.
That's interesting. You don't usually hear that from a relatively unknown actor bringing in their own director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just because they were scrambling just to salvage this movie that they already sunk money into, and I guess, I don't know, they were willing to go with it for whatever reason, and he carries it off well. And originally the movie that David Lean had conceived of was much more ambitious, and it was actually going to be 2 films, like a 2-part film, which would show a lot more. Specifically, what we're getting here in The Bounty is kind of just like part 1. Part 2 would have been what happened afterwards in real life, which is centered around the British Navy's response to this. They did actually, they sent out a ship, the HMS Pandora, to exact some justice, and they did track a few of these guys down, but not as many as they wanted. And for quite a few years, the fate of some of them, the ones that Christian himself was with, nobody knew where they were for years. And by the time they were discovered, only one of them was still alive. John Henry, I believe, was his name. And there's just differing accounts about how the others died, whether they killed each other. There's a few accounts here I found on the Wikipedia page, like a few murdered each other, and then there was stuff like with scuffles, of course, with Native Islanders and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's where most guess that Christian died was in let's see, was it whatever that the Pitcairn Island they were on? The natives kind of killed a lot of those guys, and I think he was maybe among them. Yeah,
most likely. It's scrambled accounts about what actually wound up happening to Christian himself. But he had some children with at least one native girl there that's in the movie, and they survived, and him and some of the other guys, they have descendants that live on to this day down there, which is kind of interesting, which is one of the reasons why people know the story. Although, of course, the other thing is that Bligh, of course, made it out. The Captain Bligh. I think a lot of people who haven't even seen this movie or Mutiny on the Bounty, he's kind of a figure, even though he's real in historical fiction, but he's a figure kind of in the movie world. A lot of people bring up, as like an example of kind of like a tyrant or whatever. We're not going to do a big side-by-side comparison, plus I haven't even seen the others, although I've seen some of the 62 movie. I've seen at least part of it. I remember seeing it as a kid. And both those, the Mutiny on the Bounty movies, basically, they're much more cut and dry. It's more like Christian is the hero and Bligh is the villain. This movie, humanizes Bligh a lot more and actually points out the things that he did right and did well. And, so this movie is not really about taking sides or picking out a villain. It's more like, just showing sort of the circumstances that led to what happened. And, both sides kind of have merit. You can see where Bligh went overboard, no pun intended there, on the discipline. But you also can see how, like, foolish and short-sighted it was of Fletcher Christian and, his mutineers, the plan, like how, it was not a very good plan. And you saw how that worked out and stuff. So you can really sort of see both sides of it. And the other thing that's not really played up in either movie, which is either of the other movies before this too, which is really strange because it's not like they didn't have access to the facts of this, was that the whole reason Christian was there was because he was friends with Bligh. Mm-hmm. That's the whole reason he was there. They were friends. They were friends that had a falling out. And that's why Mel Gibson chose to be so emotional in the scene, the pivotal scene where the mutiny comes off. I don't know what other people think about it. Maybe some people think it's a little much or over the top, but I kind of understand because Mel Gibson had said, he'd read accounts that from the other mutineers, they talked about him being very emotional and upset about it because this wasn't a man he exactly hated. This was a man who was his friend, and that's why he insisted on giving them a shot and nobody being killed and stuff. And it's easy to imagine that a lot of the crew, including some that had been disciplined, would be out for blood. Jumping around here, but the part where three of them, one of the characters being Liam Neeson's characters, where three of them, while on Tahiti, try to leave and are caught, that actually did happen, and their punishment actually did happen. So a lot of the stuff is factual.
Well, yeah, he originally said that they were going to be, the punishment was death, but he didn't actually kill him, did he? He just kind of beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, they got lashes. But yeah, all three did receive lashes.
Yeah, in front of the native people.
Yep.
Which was kind of insult to injury.
Yeah, for sure. And that was part of it too. And that was one of the reasons, again, this comes from like Christian's own journals and stuff, was like he was really upset about how not only did Bligh often, reprimand him, but he did it in front of the men and the natives a lot, sometimes for things that he just completely made up because he was mad with him.
Yeah, like swabbing the deck when it was it had already been swabbed multiple times. It was filthy.
Yeah.
He seemed like a lunatic quite a bit of the time in the film, but like he just completely lost his mind, was just filled with, I don't know, jealousy or whatever reason, because these people want to leave the ship and go live in this paradise, which, God, can you blame them?
Yeah, I know. I guess part of it is just because he's a military man that's always lived that life, and every problem, his solution, he thinks is within that code, and that's what he says when they're back at sea and he has the officers at the table. He's like, the morale is down, blah blah, and we're gonna whip them into shape through discipline. Like that's his idea, like because that's his only answer with these things. He's like, okay, we're in a sorry state here, so we're gonna up the discipline. And that'll, get things ship shape. Pun totally intended on that one.
No,
but as I said, at least this movie, unlike the other movies where they just sort of show him as like a tyrant that's just sort of power tripping all the time. Like you do see the merits of it because he is basically responsible for the survival of at least most of the guys that get marooned with him. A few of them did die, but most of them did survive, and it's pretty much entirely due to his leadership and effort. So it shows that, like, in the right situation or context, he can pull it together and be a good leader. And in fact, this movie has a little bit of drama, just, as you said, it's a movie, so you got to inject some drama. because the movie, of course, opens with his court martial, which was a real thing, where he went ahead of the the admirals and stuff like that to tell his story, to explain how he'd lost the ship and stuff like that. And you get a little drama where at first they seem to be judging him pretty harshly. Well, in real life, the court martial was almost a formality, in that by the time he'd gotten back, he was almost his people. The story of what he'd done had already spread to England. He came back almost as a hero beforehand, so it was just sort of a formality that that they had to do the court martial, and they kind of never for a moment doubted anything he said, and they just in fact, not only did they clear him of charges, they promoted him. But they, for the sake of the movie, they inject a little drama in there, where at first it seems like, they're judging him very harshly, and he's going to have to win them over. But, crap, I had another starting point, but I lost it.
Yeah, it's like you said, the most, or at least from what I've read, the most, accurate depiction of the actual mutiny. Caught on film, that is.
Yeah. For something that happened, well over 200 years ago. But, just for people that don't know, very quickly. So this is the 1780s. And this is back when, so this is just after, this is in the years following the Revolutionary War. And, the U.S. becoming its own country, which had sort of a domino effect on the British Empire and others. Like, actually, they had to downsize their navy and stuff because of it, and this is why Bligh was in the position to be on this anyway. Bligh was a pretty experienced guy. In fact, the last voyage he'd been on was the last voyage of Captain Cook. He sailed with Cook. So when he's talking to the king about Cook, he's lying, but it is true that he knows him. In fact, they don't mention it in the. I don't know if they really mentioned it in the movie, but the truth is, the king was king back then too, 15 years before, and recognized Bligh. And that's why he was so happy to receive him, because he already knew him from Captain Cook's visit. And Captain Cook made a very strong impression on the natives, and that they thought of him as almost godlike, which pretty much lines up again with historical stuff where people would talk about, there's great people in history. Apparently Cook was one of those guys that kind of had an aura about him. Like, everybody that met him was just super impressed by him and thought he was awesome and stuff. It's too bad his life ended the way it did. But I mean, he's he'll always be a legend. And the people of Tahiti were pretty warm about this. So anyway, so Bligh had actually, because of again, this is not directly because of the Revolutionary War, but blah blah blah, because of the state of the blah stuff. He'd actually been idle for a few years. He'd been on shore, which he didn't want to do. So this is why he kind of jumped at the opportunity for this voyage, just because he wanted to get out again, and plus. The kind of boat the Bounty was, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically this, in the class of British warships at the time, it was the smallest one, which meant it had sort of different rules. For instance, even though all the guys on it were technically considered Navy or military, they really kind of weren't. They weren't Marines, which shows, and is also part of the reason why there was a mutiny in the first place, because there wasn't really the same sort of strong bond. Even though he did pick a lot of the guys himself, it was mostly on recommendation by various benefactors and kind of rich people about town that he knew. They'd say, "Oh, use this guy and that guy." And again, this is why Christian was on it. He was already friends with Christian, and it led to one of the problems that there was, already another guy that was going to be second in command. I'm trying to remember his name there. Fryer. He was Sailing Master Fryer. This is the character played by Daniel Day-Lewis. And, I'm not exactly sure what the real account was, but in the movie, very early on, I don't know, some kind of thing happens, and just out of nowhere, Bligh decides to blame him, just so he has an excuse to promote Fletcher over him. So right off the bat, he's up jumped Fletcher just basically because of nepotism. And it was true that Christian came from a well-to-do family, but he was only 22, and he didn't have any sort of much experience or rank. So he was basically sort of a mid-level guy that just got jumped into this high position just because of the favoritism of Bligh, which I'm sure led to a little bit of tension there. Although they don't show too much of it with Fryer. It seems that And in the account, the account that was written down about it, whatever, when Fryer was demoted, he didn't outwardly do much. In fact, they have him do more in the movie where he says, like, this is an outrage and stuff. Like, apparently in real life, he didn't even do that. I mean, he was mad about it, but he kind of, like, just sort of accepted it quietly at the time. But yeah, so you've got Daniel Day-Lewis as Sailing Master John Fryer, and then you have amongst the other crew guys, Liam Neeson's one of them. And our introduction to him is he's a big brawler guy.
Which
he gets in a fight with everybody.
doesn't seem like Liam Neeson at all, really. But yeah, he plays it
we're
well.
used to Liam Neeson, the older Liam Neeson. Liam
Right.
Neeson's so typecast now. He's basically a mentor. He's always an older, calm, measured mentor figure, usually. And in the case of something like Taken, that's the same thing, right? It's like it's only because they took his daughter, pushed him to his limits. He's not a violent man. But now, whereas this, he's just a violent guy. He's saying, "Get out of my seat," and they're like, screw up," and he's like beating everybody up because he can, because Liam Neeson's 6'4", which would have made him a fucking giant back then. Now that's just the movie. There's no account saying necessarily that the guy was that big, but it doesn't matter for the sake of it. So he's sort of a memorable character. And yeah, the early scenes are just sort of to give you a dynamic of what the crew is like, and most of them get along and stuff like that. And of course, the thing that would have been true about any sort of British vessel at the time was there's always a massive gap between the captain and the officers and the rest of the crew. Like, the captain and the officers are always, like, they have way better living quarters and everything, and they're dining at their table with their their silverware and their tablecloth and everything. They try to keep everything very fancy. Meanwhile, the crew live in really shitty conditions with almost no room and hammocks and stuff. And so that's something that was just how it worked back then. And I don't know, it's kind of like that now still in a lot of navies, but not to that extent. But that's another reason why you wonder, like, why were mutinies even more common? Because you have the officers, and they're always way above the rest of the crew. And I don't know. So anyway, getting back to it before I went on another spiel. So that's why he took the mission. And the mission, which I didn't say, the mission was just sort of a simple thing where they were going to go to Tahiti, which was known for its bread, where they'd already established some good relations through Cook, and get breadfruit, which they thought was going to be something that they could take to some of the British colonies in the West Indies. They mentioned Jamaica in this. This is the late 1700s, so this is back when the British Empire still had slaves. And actually the idea was the breadfruit would be, they would get plants and deposit them, figure they would, they're not native to the West Indies, but they could, get them to grow there, and they'd make a nice cheap food source for the slaves on the plantations there. That was actually the idea there. And for people that don't know geography too well, they had to go from England down, and his idea was to go around Cape Horn, which is the very southern tip of South America, and then go continue west, because Tahiti would be in the Western Pacific, or Eastern, depending on how you look at it. It's one of those edge of the world type places, right? It's the Western Pacific if you're going from America, but if you're going from Australia, it's even further east from Australia. So that's where Tahiti was, and the Cape Horn is known for its storms, and just like in the movie, in real life, it's what happened. They're beaten back by a storm, which I wish they'd showed a little more of. Like, it was pretty cool, but I kind of even would have liked to have seen it more.
Sure.
Unlike we talked about with the other water movies, unlike most water movies, this movie actually came in under budget, which is kind of impressive.
And on time, right?
And on time, yeah, which is doubly impressive for a movie like that. But it only has really the one storm scene, and it's quite well done and stuff. They do a good job, although sometimes I wish they'd pull back and show you a little more. But I can understand why that's problematic, because usually you just sort of get like the close-up shots. Obviously the wind machines are going, and they're dumping water on the crew, and they're tipping the floor and stuff. I mean, it all looks very good and stuff. They built a brand new $4 million of the budget went just to the boat they built to be the Bounty, and it's a very good boat. It's awesome.
Apparently, it was a steel covered with wood.
Wow, I wouldn't have known. They did a great job. It looked very sort of authentic. I've always had sort of a fascination with those sorts of boats and stuff like that, and I see them all the time. Every year, the tall ships come to Halifax, and I go down. Even though I see them every year, I see them again and stuff. And I've been on some of the famous ones, or replicas of famous ones, because none, I don't think any of them are that old have survived, but, you know, ones in that style and stuff. And it's pretty fascinating because, you know, for most of human history, this was the way to go long distances.
Right.
Air travel only even really became the main thing in like the second half of the 20th century. Like even in the 20th century, boats was still how you know, mostly traversed oceans and stuff like that. To think that people did it in, you know, boats like this, you know, no electricity, no engine, no, you know, just sails and sometimes oars.
With very, you know, rudimentary compasses and, you know, devices.
I know how they navigate is really fascinating too. I don't know enough about it, but you know, they talk a little about it in this, about the charts, and they're talking about how there's all these different islands. It's like some of them are charted and some of them aren't. And jumping ahead to the end, that's how Christian settles on the place they go. He says, I remember these are ones that aren't in the British Navy's charts. They're not on there, so they won't be able to find us, because the whole point is they need to find an island that the British won't be able to locate, and that's why they have trouble, and that's because you're thinking, yeah, there's plenty of islands out there. What's their problem? Well, it's because they needed to find specifically an island that the British wouldn't be able to find, and so they had to, yeah. I don't know. As they said, they kind of find it just through luck. The other guy says, you know, we easily could have missed it, and he goes, "Yep," and which is very true. But yeah, to think that and again, it shows what a great seaman Bligh was, because when they're out in the launch, as he said, "Okay, we're gonna go try to find here," and he said, without the charts, he's like, "I guess I'll have to do it by memory," which is pretty impressive too. What they did. Because originally the plan was to go to what was the name of the place? Hold on, Tafua, which wasn't really that far from Tahiti, and that was the plan. But once they got to Tafua, the natives there were very hostile, and they had to leave.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't that where Blythe ended up? Tafua. Yeah. They were there for
he did go there on purpose because he thought that's the closest place, and that's what I can remember to go. But yeah, they basically only barely got to land on shore and pick up a few things before the natives decided they had enough of them. And I think one of them got killed in it.
Saving the captain, yeah.
So then he's forced through what's known as the Endeavour Strait, all the way past Australia. Or not all the way past Australia. So basically between Australia and New Guinea to Kupang, which is a place in Indonesia, which at the time would have been, you know, everybody knows what the West Indies are, but also there was the Dutch East Indies. These were the Dutch East Indies. That's why they're going there, because they were controlled by the Dutch, and they knew that, you know, they wouldn't be killed there because there'd be other white Europeans there. So that was why they went to Kupang. And so that's if people are wondering if that's German or something, they say no, it's not German, it's Dutch. But I'm sure people know that because there's no German flags or anything like that. Also, jumping ahead too, I like when they finally find Kupang. And he's just like they're all half dead, more than half dead probably at this point, and a few of them have died. And they're like, "All right," and he's like, "Get the flag up." He's like, "We have to be official whenever we land. Get the flag up." It just really shows his character, right? It's like, doesn't matter what, you stick to the rules, you be official, you follow the Navy protocol. I thought that was a great moment, so that they throw the flag up there. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
This guy's a horrible person, it seems like. And it seems like this film is trying to make him seem like a better guy than he was, because, I mean, all the stuff I'm reading about him, like, he went on to, you know, be the captain of other ships after he was exonerated here.
Yeah.
And there were further mutinies against him because he was so cruel.
I know. All this taught him was that I wasn't cruel enough.
Right.
Like, he's just one of those guys.
More discipline.
I don't know. I still found, maybe it's because I still like the actor too. Maybe it's the actor too, but I still found him sympathetic. Like, I didn't think he was as clear-cut the villain. Not to mention, this is finally a portrayal by Mel Gibson where, again, it's just not too well thought out. At least you get to see he's not a bad guy either. He's conflicted by it because he was friends with Bligh and stuff like that. But you just sort of see that, like, what he did led to more people getting killed and stuff, and strife amongst the Polynesians who, you know, were doing well.
I mean, how
I
easy
mean,
would it have been to just kill him? You know,
yeah,
a couple of guys just kill him in the on the island. Who would know the difference?
all right.
So I mean, he very easily could have taken that route, but didn't. He did give him a chance to live, which he did. Even though you'd think just putting him adrift is kind of like a death.
Yeah, it seems like a death, and it seems like that, but like the other guys, either it's interesting. Like I don't know if that's because they're just so impressed because they think Bly is so good because they just said he'll be able to come after us. How will he come after us? It's like we got the ship,
Yeah.
he's stuck out there. But yeah, in history, yes, he doesn't specifically come after them, but he very quickly reports the mutiny, and there is a response that we don't see in the movie in the form of the HMS Pandora. Like he's very upset about it, and I could imagine being very upset about it. Even if you're a shitty captain, yeah, you're going to be upset about. You're going to be upset about it.
How do you think it would have played in 2 movies? You think it would have been better, or do you think it's better like this?
I kind of think it's better like this because the whole thing about the Pandora mission is basically a downer.
Yeah.
The Pandora goes to Tahiti, and the guy, the captain, Captain Edwards, was even more gung ho than Blythe ever was. Maybe because this is part of his job, is go after things. Because when he got to Tahiti and he met some of the guys, now there's a detail we didn't say that happens in the movie and happened in real life too. Is that okay? After the mutiny, and Bly has been set adrift, and Christian and the guys with him return to Tahiti. At first, there's some guys on the ship that didn't want to be part of the mutiny at all. There just wasn't room for them in the boat that they sent the other officers and Bly off in, and they weren't going to kill them. So they asked to stay on Tahiti just so they could wait for the next ship. And the next ship did come eventually. The Pandora did come with Edwards. Edwards didn't care that these men weren't mutineers. To him, he made no distinction. To him, they were there, so they were mutineers. So he clapped them in irons right off anyway, even though these were guys that, again, were not part of the mutiny and just got dumped on the island, and they were loyal. And Captain Edwards didn't give a shit. It didn't matter to him. So yeah, they surrendered, or he captured them. He didn't make any sort of thing, and yeah, and he threw them into some sort of prison that they actually called Pandora's Box, which is kind of clever, I'll admit. And
Sure.
yeah, so then they would sail around to different islands trying to find these guys, and they did manage to find some of them, including Haywood, who is one of the characters in the movie that we get to see. I'm pretty sure Haywood is one of the ones they bring Haywood back? Anyway, I don't know. It is interesting, but yeah, I don't think a second movie is as necessary. I mean, yeah, you could make it about you could make it about Edwards, I suppose. But it is sort of a downer, all the stuff that happens. And again, while they do find a few of them, the main people like Christian don't get found.
Right.
They never do find that island. It's not until sometime like 18 years later or something, some American ship finds them, and that's the first official sighting or anything of them. And by this time, Christian is dead along with everybody else except for John Henry. He's the only guy left, and he's there with a bunch of the women and children that they'd had.
Bunch of his Tahitian children.
Yeah. Tahiti's awesome though. But like you said, it's so easy to understand. Like, can you just imagine, especially if you're not an officer, you're just some lower class guy and you work on a ship and everybody's on top of you. There's no room and you're being worked to death by the crew. And even when you get time off, what are you going to do? You're stuck on a goddamn ship, eating the same crap every night, pissing over the side. And then suddenly you land on this island paradise, which is, you've never seen in your life. You're from England. You're from dingy England. Now you're on this tropical paradise, things you've never seen, with palm trees and white beaches and crystal water and friendly native people that live happy lives. Oh yeah, and like hot, uninhibited, topless girls that are super pleased to see you, that have very different attitudes about sex and love than the women from the part of the world you're from. they don't even speak your language, which I'm sure for a lot of you is a great bonus. It's like, even better. There's,
Yeah.
so it's this wonderful paradise. So you can just imagine like having this captain and everybody rip you away from it. In the case of Christian, like he supposedly really did fall in love with this woman for the sake of drama. They make her like the king's daughter. I don't think she was actually.
Yeah.
I don't think she's the king's daughter in real life, but this beautiful woman and stuff. And
Granddaughter, I think.
yeah, but I liked it. It also shows the laid back attitudes of the Polynesians. In that, he finds out that he got her pregnant, and they don't really mind. They're like, "Yeah, that's okay. You'll remember."
Just
like,
remember.
Just remember. He's like completely okay that this foreign white guy showed up and knocked up his daughter. Now he's going to leave forever. They're happy about it leaving, and I think that's something that for people that didn't know the history, it's kind of surprising. Is when they come back, they don't get the same warm welcome at all. And in fact, they have a pretty good understanding of. They're like, "Oh, wait a second. So what you did was a mutiny." King George. So you guys talked about King George. He'll send people after you. I don't want to get caught up in the middle of this. So he does have some sense of it. Though also you get to see the way the British exploited these people because of the way they lied to them. Because for one thing, they make it sound like the breadfruit. Now, it's not like the breadfruit is a big deal. I'm sure the Polynesians don't mind part of the breadfruit, but I don't know if they'd be happy if they knew the real reason. Because they're saying, "Oh yeah, King George, he wants the plants too, so he can plant them in his garden," which makes no fucking sense because they don't know England's climate. They don't know how far away it is either. The plants will probably all die before they get there, so they're just like, "Oh, that's nice. The king will plant in the garden," instead of saying, "Well, actually, we want to grow this plant in another island place that's kind of like your place, except we made slaves of the people there." I understand why you leave all that out, but still, so they're exploiting these people, and of course, a lot of the guys there are probably just exploiting them too. It's just like, topless women, free love, do whatever I want and stuff. But I mean, for the most part, the Polynesians are pretty cool about everything. You feel pretty bad for them.
Yeah.
And you understand why, we don't want to get caught in the middle of this war. We saw Captain Cook come with all his ships and guns. We understand the power of the British Empire very, very well. So we don't want to get caught in this. So yeah. So Christian has this rude awakening that, no, we're not happy to see you again. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And you're going to have to be careful because guess what? We like you, but most of the people on these other islands don't and will kill you, which is what Bligh had run into. In fact, this isn't in the movie, which is kind of too bad because there's a whole part where Christian and his guys have a big confrontation with some hostile islanders, and they blow up a bunch of them with a cannon and everything. It's too bad that's not in the movie, really. They do have something, right, where some of them rush out after them, but
that would, yeah, they wouldn't be able to work in the, making Bligh look like a human character.
Right, exactly.
Blowing up people, which, I don't know. I thought Hopkins did a good job portraying him, even though I know that he and the director clashed on how to play the part quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
On the film.
Like I said, I like the way he played it. It made me more sympathetic to Bligh because even though he's, being kind of a dick and a tyrant and stuff like that, I still do see his side of it for a lot of it and stuff. And he is quite heroic and a good leader when it comes to saving himself and the men in the launch. So, like I said, I kind of like it because I see both sides and I see sort of the good and bad. Like neither's a great man and neither's a terrible bad man either. And you have to also keep in mind that the Christian was only 23.
Wow.
And you can understand what it would be like to just be a 23-year-old. You've grown up in a fairly privileged life. Your family expects you to be like a lawyer or something, but you want adventure, so you decide to go into the Navy. You make friends with kind of a high-up guy, and now you get to have your adventurous life and stuff, but now you land on this island, and you fall in love with this beautiful foreign woman and stuff. You can understand it. You're 23, you're even more susceptible to all that, let alone just, a more experienced seaman.
Yeah, I mean, he immediately starts getting tattoos like the natives, and
the very definition of going native.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
But, a lot of them did, though. A lot of them did. He wasn't the only one.
It seems like he wants to embrace that lifestyle and stay there and live with his new wife, doesn't it? I mean, but
very much so. And in the end, it's just I guess a bit of loyalty to Bligh. Bligh's just saying, you can't do it. People will come after you and stuff because even when he was on the island, he was not thinking mutiny. And I don't know if it's true because in the movie they show that several other guys suggest the idea to him. I don't
Yeah.
really know exactly where it occurs, but
Who
it doesn't.
knows? Yeah.
But it is true that like he's not thinking about it while he's on the island. He's just sort of, I don't know, keeps putting it off or whatever like that. Let's see here. Like by April 27th, Christian was in a state of despair, depressed, and brooding. His mood was worsened when Bligh accused him of stealing coconuts for the captain's private supply, which is in the movie. Bligh punished the whole crew for this theft, stopping their rum ration and reducing their food by half. Feeling his position was now intolerable, Christian considered constructing a raft to which he could escape to an island and take his chances with the natives, which they don't show. And discontent. And then two of the young gentlemen, George Stewart and Edward Young, urged him not to desert. So, yeah, that's all it says. So that he was urged not to desert, not that he was urged to mutiny. They just told him he shouldn't desert.
I almost feel like if he had just let, the few guys that wanted to stay there, it wouldn't have been a problem. I don't know, I guess.
That's just unacceptable to somebody like Bligh, though, right?
Swear your allegiance to the
exactly.
Navy, I guess, yeah.
Exactly, like you're a traitor if you're a deserter and stuff. Which I understand, again, they have their rules, they have their code, and you don't run an empire by, letting stuff slide. I get it. Yeah. As I've said to people many, many times, like, there's few jobs I'd be less good at, in Navy especially because of the ocean, but I just mean than just being a soldier, than being in the military. I hate how the military works. I hate it, and it works so poorly. I mean, but at the same time, I totally understand why it has to work that way, and that's why, like, even if it's like whatever country, the military is basically kind of run the same way. It's because for thousands of years, this is basically, if you're going to have a huge armed fighting force, blah blah blah, do all this stuff, you have to have discipline, you have to have rank and order, you have to have all that stuff that I hate. But I get why you need it. Like, and I guess this is sort of another example. Like, this is if you're going to make these things work, if you're going to sail these rickety wooden boats all the way across the world, like, you need everybody on board doing their job.
Yeah, I mean, it's like taming a wild animal. You have to break it down and then build it back up, and that's exactly what the military does. Mm-hmm. All militaries, they break you as a person, and they build you back up in the form of a soldier or whatever your job is. I mean, it's just like it's almost like Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous too. All that stuff works same type way. They use like psychology on all that stuff, like to break you of whatever you're doing wrong.
Yeah, just the idea of rank, I hate it so much. I just hate the idea that somebody can just yell in your face because they're high rank. But again, I get why it needs to be done in that situation, and luckily I don't need to be in the military, so it's okay. I would not have handled that. What's that?
Cults also do the exact same thing.
Yes, that's very true. It's true, yeah. Sometimes there's a little of a fine line, isn't it? Like, how much of a cult are some of these militaries?
Yeah.
But they did shoot some of this, I think, in Tahiti.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I know they shot some of it around New Zealand.
Yeah, around there. There were a few different places. Let's see here.
And I think
what's funny is, do you know one of their actors considered for Christian's role was Sting?
Ugh.
Oh, man.
And didn't they want Christopher Reeve?
Yeah. He also
number one choice was?
Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve, Sting, and David Essex. There's another, I don't know how well he's known over here, but he's another musician. David Essex was a musician like Sting. He was a rock guy. I don't know if he's really a big deal in North America, but Europeans would have known him as a rock star. He had a song called Rock On, for God's sake, David Essex.
No, Christopher Reeve turned it down in the favor of switching channels.
Ugh.
So
that's not smart.
Yeah, he should have fired his agent.
Oh yeah, here we go. Shot on location in Moria in French Polynesia. So yeah, Polynesia, that's Tahiti. And a few other places, like you said. Many of the shots of the ship were filmed in Opahonu Bay, Moria, which is the same bay Captain James Cook anchored in 1777.
That's cool. Kind of a little bit of
Yeah.
realism there.
Yeah, that's cool. And some other stuff about the production here is, and it's true. A lot of people know that, like, when you talk about like Lethal Weapon, that Mel Gibson was like a super awesome functioning alcoholic. He was like blitzed all the time and stuff like that, and yet he was never late to the set of or anything, and he was always super professional at like Lethal Weapon. He was never late, and yet he was like drunk and blitzed all the time. He was just somehow he just pushed himself through it.
You would never know.
I
mean, you would never know on set, but
right.
Well,
that's what people said. They said on set he was completely professional in everything, even though like he was barely sleeping and he was, drunk off his ass half the time. He managed to like sober himself up and do the job right. Anyway, this is a few years earlier, and he was already doing that, and it points out that what's his name?
Hopkins.
That Hopkins was concerned about it because Hopkins himself had alcoholism problems earlier in his career, and he was concerned about it and stuff. But they both give good performances. As I've noted, I know some people are a little harsh on Gibson and think maybe he oversells it a little bit. It doesn't bother me. I don't really think it's too bad.
No, I'm totally fine with most of the performances in the film. I thought Mel Gibson did a great job.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember how Marlon Brando played it.
You can just imagine.
Well, yeah, because he kind of played everything the same way. Isn't it funny that Marlon Brando's like a great actor, but he kind of played everything the same way?
I don't know. I think he's a bit overrated, personally. But
I think I don't know if he's overrated, because this is how I feel. Like, yeah, it's not that he was really a great actor; it's that he was a great personality. Is more so really is what it is, right? Because I mean, even the people that say he's a great actor know that like he couldn't even fucking memorize lines. When he was doing like Last Tango in Paris, what were they doing? They were like writing his lines down on like pieces of the set so he could like look at them while he walks around.
Write the lines down on the girl's ass cheek or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if he was ever exactly known as, I mean, a good actor, sure, but I think it's more because he was a great performer and personality is kind of his aura and mystique. Which got, kind of harder to sell when he started getting super fat and weird.
He was always
I pointed
weird,
out this before, but isn't it great how like he and Orson Welles followed like almost the exact sort of kind of career trajectory? They were both like young, brilliant and stuff, and then once they hit middle age and stuff, they seemed to like drift, and then they got fat and really bizarre.
I think The Island of Dr. Moreau says it all.
Mm-hmm.
Have we done that on this show? No, we just talked about it.
We talked a lot about it because we did Island of Lost Souls.
Oh, that's right.
And also we talked a little about it when we did Hardware, because it was directed by Richard Stanley and stuff. So it almost feels like we did a show on it because we talked a lot about it and its production and all the wackiness and stuff, and of course Brando being.
The movie's fascinating.
It is.
Just like to be as big as Brando, you basically do whatever you want. It's like whatever, I'm gonna, nope, this is my character choice. I'm gonna drape myself in velvet and be covered with suntan or sunscreen all day.
Yeah.
That's I
always wonder about exactly what it's like to reach that level. You're just making so much money and you're such a name that people do. Because some of it's in another movie that never got made that I was always fascinated with was the Dune movie that Jodorowsky was going to do and stuff, because he talked about the various people he wanted to recruit, and one of them was what was it? Salvador Dali, right? And Dali was so rich and so famous and so revered that like he demanded like what was it? He wanted to be paid $1 million for one scene or something that. Like that was the only way he would do it. And he's like, or what was it? It was like he wanted like to be paid something like $300,000 for every minute he's on screen. Some crazy bullshit like that.
He was going to act in the film?
Yeah, he was going to act.
Wow.
That's one of the reasons why, like, as awesome as it also sounds like maybe it's a good thing it didn't happen. Because, he actually recruited several people who weren't actors at all to play important parts just because he thought, and Salvador Dali was... And the whole thing, the story of finding him was crazy, too, because you couldn't just meet Dali either. He met him Like he'd meet him like at some cafe in Paris and be like, "That's an interesting idea." And he's like, "Well, wait a second, I have more." And he's like, "No, don't tell me. In 3 weeks, I'll be in Barcelona. Meet me there." And he had to like keep playing tag and meeting him in different places throughout Europe before he finally actually got him to agree to anything. Because that's what it was to be like the icon that Ali was, like just so rich and so famous that he just, he just dick around and do whatever he wanted and play games with people and
Was this the early '80s or late '70s?
This was the mid '70s.
Okay, so it sat around for a little while before Lynch got a hold of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the time Lynch got a hold, it was a completely different thing.
Well,
Completely different.
It's funny to say that you're glad Jodorowsky didn't do it because it would have been too weird. But then David Lynch, of all people, gets a hold of the film. But
that might be worth viewing sometime. It's such a it's a weird. It has some things that you can like about it and some interesting concepts and ideas, but so many of the scenes go like nowhere.
yeah,
It's just them talking for the sake of talking, and like this is not advancing the plot. I don't even. Do you even know what the book is? Stuff like that. What's funny is, So our friend Raiho, he was sort of a fan of Dune and the series. I don't know how many he read, but he years and years ago when we were teens, he loaned Dune, the first Dune, to me, and I barely got through it. I didn't like it at all, and I've never gone back to it. So I've never really been a Dune fan, but it's been announced now. There's going to be a new Dune movie, but it's going to be directed by the guy that just did Blade Runner, Villeneuve. So I love him so much. I think I have total confidence that the Dune movie will be awesome.
I don't know why you would want to go into another established property. I don't know. It must just be a boatload of money they're willing to give him.
Maybe they just begged him. They're like, "You have to. You're the one to do it." I don't know.
I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't want to go. I mean, after doing undertaking that Blade Runner was.
Yeah. Plus, he's already sort of done. He'd even done sci-fi before that. Like, didn't he do Arrival?
Did he do Arrival? I guess he did, didn't he?
Yeah. So you think, well, maybe you need a break from sci-fi.
I've liked virtually everything I've seen from him.
Oh yeah, I definitely do. Like I said, after seeing how amazing the Blade Runner movie was, as somebody who's not really a Dune fan, like I'm excited about his Dune because I think it'll be awesome.
Yeah, I think Blade Runner was my favorite movie of 2017.
Oh yeah, mine by a mile. I mean, I'm a little biased because I love Blade Runner anyway,
Right.
Blade Runners. But at the same time, as I told many people, like I was terrified of this movie.
I was too.
Because, as I said, I hold Blade Runner in such high esteem that even if this movie was, like, not bad and okay, that wouldn't be nearly good enough. I'd be like, oh, what a letdown. But this movie was fantastic. I loved it. Loved it.
It's
Actually, I haven't seen it again. I have to see it soon. I could have bought it the other day, but I didn't.
I've watched it a few times. I picked it up on Vudu, and I'm able to stream it in 4K. So there was a sale when it first came out on. It was like the 4K was like way cheaper than just the Blu-ray. So
yeah, I was looking at the 4K Blu-ray just yesterday. I was at Best Buy for the first time in forever and bought a couple movies and stuff. I didn't buy that, but eventually I will. My TV's not 4K anyway, so not much point there. But and that was the thing. They didn't actually. I think that's why they didn't have them. They only had the 4K ones. They were sold out of, I think, the normal Blu-ray. I think is what it was.
Those 4K Blu-rays are really expensive too. That's what I've noticed.
I was kind of surprised by, at least in my Best Buy, like how inconsistent stuff was.
Really?
Like, yeah. I didn't see any that were super expensive. I mean, they were expensive. Like they were probably like $32, something like that. But that's not really terrible. I've seen a lot worse. The ones that are more expensive still are the 3D Blu-ray. They're super expensive. Although I don't know who's buying them anyway, because you need a 3D player and a 3D TV. I mean, I actually own one. I own the 3D edition of Prometheus, but that's just because it had everything included. I know people. That's a movie I don't defend. It's a movie where I understand every single thing that's wrong with it, and I kind of like it anyway. That's just all I can really say about Prometheus. There's still something I find to like about it.
I like Prometheus quite a bit until Alien Covenant came out. And I don't think I'm ever going to be able to look at it the same way.
Just pretend Alien Covenant doesn't exist.
I may have to.
Just like I do with Alien 3.
Because, in my mind, I was trying to pretend it was a standalone thing. Ridley Scott's doing something different. And let's all give him the chance to do something different, but he wants to incorporate that. I mean, obviously, shoehorned it right into the alien lore there. But I'm telling you, I'm surprised he didn't make Blade Runner with xenomorphs in it. I'm surprised he didn't do the Blade Runner sequel.
I'm so glad he didn't.
Me too.
So glad. Because I mean, yeah, that's how it works with some of these people. I mean, I love what they create, and they did awesome. But sometimes these things do need like a fresh pair of eyes or whatever. You know, somebody different, somebody outside. You know, I think the problem with somebody like him doing this stuff again is he's too close to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think he's lost it.
That's valid too, man. I mean, what was the last good thing he did for me was Kingdom of Heaven. I like Kingdom of Heaven.
He's been fairly busy. I can't even remember what the last thing he did before Covenant.
Look it up.
Which is so sad because I like a lot of stuff he's done.
Oh yeah, I mean it does. I mean he's one of those guys where it doesn't really matter how much he screws up because of the stuff he did before. I love so much. I mean, I know he's produced a shitload of stuff, obviously, as these people do. They just, I hate movies that like make a big deal of who produced it. Like it really matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
They seem to finally stop doing. But remember, like in the late 2000s, everything was like somebody presents. It was like Quentin Tarantino presents, like some movie he had nothing to do with. You know, they did that. Like I'm pretty sure they did that with Ridley Scott too. They had a few ones where it was presents, which meant he was like some sort of not involved producer. And by presents, it's more like had no objection to. Is basically what they mean.
Well, Tarantino brought a lot of cool Asian stuff over here, and they probably wouldn't have seen the light of day if it wasn't for him, which I'm cool with.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. I get that's fine.
But
oh man, he did it. I never saw The Martian, which I'm sure a lot of people liked, but man, he did Exodus: Gods and Kings. Ouch.
That's a bad one.
And he did that awful Robin Hood.
I was going to ask if you'd seen that.
That made me so sad. I saw that in theaters, man. I was so sad. And he did American Gangster, which I think is boring as hell.
Body of Lies was garbage.
I was okay with it. Like I didn't like it, but I didn't mind it.
I've never seen Russell Crowe fatter and less involved in that movie.
But there's a moment in the movie that makes it amazing. Don't you remember? Because okay, this is Body of Lies, 2008. So a fat Russell Crowe is kind of new to us at this point, right? So all I can think through the movie is Russell Crowe looks so fat and old. And then there's this scene. There's the only scene where he and Leo DiCaprio are together, because for most of it, DiCaprio's over in the Middle East, and he's, and they're talking. It's the only one where he's back in America, and they're having a face-to-face conversation. And DiCaprio's freaking out on him for all the things he did wrong. He's like, you led me into trouble, and you didn't blah, 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 and you used me. And then he just goes, and you're fat. You're fucking fat. Do some fucking push-ups or something like that. And I'm thinking, I think that's just Leo going off script. But that was a great moment. That made it all worth it. But yeah, you're totally right. And he's doing some sort of like kind of weird can you do an American accent? And he's like, sure. And it sounds like he's just doing like 3 or 4 different kinds of American accents at once. It's like, I'm from Brooklyn, Jersey, I don't know, Philadelphia. Like he's just got like this all over the place American accent.
Generic American accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One that he did that wasn't a big deal because he did it, but I always thought looked interesting that I still never saw was Matchstick Men.
That's not bad. Was that him?
I was thinking that
was his brother.
Him.
Okay, that was him. Okay.
Yeah, it was him. It was one of the last sort of like big what's his name? Nicolas Cage type vehicles.
Yeah. Back before he was straight to DVD with everything.
Yeah.
Or straight to streaming.
I watched Nick Cage today because I watched 8mm. I watched 8mm today. I hadn't seen that since it came out like in '99. That was last time, and I hated it. And I didn't hate it this time, but I didn't really like it. I was like, I remember I hated it, but I don't remember the movie at all. So I watched it. Now I don't hate it, but yeah, it's just a bland, sort of forgettable movie.
I was going to ask how it holds up. So it's not too well.
No, Norman Reedus is in there. In for one scene, like a young unknown Norman Reedus.
The porn shop guy? Is that who he plays?
No, that's actually a bigger role. That's Joaquin Phoenix.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, no, the Norman Reedus is just one scene. He's just like the ex-boyfriend of the girl he's looking for. She's like, and all he does is say "fuck" like 15 times in the scenes. It's like, I don't know where the fuck she is. Just because I fucked her doesn't mean I fucking know. Go the fuck away. And he's like, okay, like, hey, Norman Reedus, everybody. But
Oh, man, I can't wait to pay that guy $200 for an autograph.
oh man, and like ever since he became attached to Death Stranding, he's like best friends with Hideo Kojima. So I see him like 15 times a day on my Twitter feed.
Oh no.
Norman Reedus do it, like somebody I never would have cared about because I wasn't a fan of Walking Dead or anything. Like I didn't watch it. Like I knew who he was, but I knew like his character was like blew up on that show. Like everybody like wanted him. The men, the girls, they all wanted him. But anyway, yeah. So constantly, every day he's in my Twitter feed because like it's like something like Hideo Kojima like retweets or something like that. It's like here he is in some T-shirt. Like okay.
I can imagine that's his entire Twitter feed.
Just him in a series of T-shirts.
Here he is smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Because that's still cool. Yeah.
But another thing that's kind of neat about this movie is, well, it's a period piece set in, you know, the 18th century there. They went 80s for the soundtrack.
Yeah.
An 80s synth-based soundtrack by noted Greek composer Vangelis, who has done non-synth things. Like just before this, a few years ago, he did Chariots of Fire, which was a big deal, that theme. That's like the only, that's always on a list of like worst movies to win Best Picture, which I agree with because it's a fucking boring movie. I figure the only reason it won is because the theme, like everybody loved it so much. So that's Vangelis. But yeah, Vangelis was more of a synth guy. In fact, he did Blade Runner.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that's one thing that feels like, even though it's a period piece, this movie starts like even if you didn't know what year it was, you would know like immediately you would know the year, because first of all, it's like a Dino De Laurentiis production comes up, and then like the synth comes in, and it's like, it's like what?
What did I get myself into?
Yeah, no, it's like, am I watching Manhunter?
Yeah, that.
But even though it is like a different sort of thing, it's like not orchestral at all. It doesn't take you out of the movie. It doesn't, it fits okay. Like it's I get, proof of his talent that he can take, modern instruments or whatever and put them into this sort of context, and it doesn't take you out of it.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Anyone that's ever seen Chariots of Fire can immediately tell you that song, that one specific.
Oh yeah, I knew the song years and years before I ever saw the movie. And it would show up in pop culture all the time whenever there's a moment where people have to slow motion run.
Yeah, well, always. Yeah, I wonder. I wonder how many times that's been done. Probably hundreds. I was trying to find the soundtrack here. It's not on IMDb.
There was something else I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what happened. What happened to Fryer? What happened to Daniel Day-Lewis's character? I can't remember where he ended up.
It was hard for me to put my finger on who he was in the film. I know he was in it, but was he one of the guys that was in the boat that was sent away with?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He must have been, because he was one of the officers. He must have been, as I can think. Like, he didn't like Bly, because the first thing Bly did was demote him, because he promoted Christian over him.
Right.
He didn't like Bly. So I'm thinking, yeah, he must have been on the boat. So I guess he must have been one of the people that survived. He's not one of the ones that died, because a couple of them died at sea and stuff. And there was some stuff, too, that I forgot about. Like, it's true, too. in real life, the ship's doctor was like a terrible drunk, and he led to like at least one crew member being killed. And here's a fun little thing that they left out of the movie: all the free love that they enjoyed on the island led to a lot of them getting various venereal diseases that he had to try to treat them for.
I would have thought they would have given the venereal disease instead of gotten it from them.
Yeah, well, maybe this that way one of them gave it and they all caught it. I don't know. But trying to remember the name of the doctor there.
We're going to the islands and we're bringing chlamydia with us.
That's no joke. I've heard.
Yeah. I'm in a small place like that. Just imagine how fast it could spread.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But yeah, even though I know Tahiti's not like that now, it still really makes me want to go. I have to say.
I don't really hear a lot about Tahiti.
It's way out there. It's like edge of the earth.
Does it get like destroyed by hurricanes all the time?
I would imagine, because it's way out in the Pacific. Like, it's not close to anything. The only thing it's close to is other small islands.
Maybe that's how it avoids.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of these things, when they're the way they're placed, yeah, they can avoid that. But no, I don't actually really know what it's like there nowadays.
There are lots of
modern times.
Lots of bare-breasted young ladies.
Yep. I figured we needed a movie like that eventually, so there you go.
It did perk my ears up a little bit when that part came along.
Perk. And I mean, the girl Fletcher winds up with is like the hottest one.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked her up. That's the only thing she's ever done. She's like a spokesperson for Tahiti.
You can see why, yeah. She's all the best things about the island.
Hey.
Right. But I mean, I imagine like even though it's 1984, it's not 1784. I still kind of imagine like the scene where a shirtless Mel Gibson is chopping wood and the girls are like watching. I figure that probably was pretty close to accurate anyway.
Sure.
I imagine a lot of the island girls be happy to see this exotic white handsome guy. So I wonder if he got any action while he was in between getting soused.
You mean while he was on the island? Yeah.
Yeah.
While he was actually there.
Yeah, exactly.
Can only imagine. Apparently, he would go out and get into fights at night in the bars.
Yeah.
And, one time
he has markings on his face in the movie that they couldn't even cover up. So they're just like, oh, okay, we'll just go with it.
The swelling was so bad they had to only film one side, but you can actually see it in a few of the scenes. Which is, I don't know, it's pretty awesome to think about that he's like filming this movie and just going out and getting just like shit-faced drunk every night, fighting in bars. I mean,
yeah.
Like if you said, where was this guy, Mel Gibson, like 35, 40 years ago? Yep, that seems about right.
Yeah. But apparently he still managed to hold it together and be very professional when it came to acting. He was just one of those, I don't know, really good functional alcoholics, like Stephen King.
Yeah.
Although in a way, Stephen King, you could say it's easier, because even though Stephen King was producing great work, he could just do it however, because he's writing.
That's true.
Producing great work that when you're an actor is different because you're on set and there's people around, stuff like that. So I'd have to say that it's even tougher for Mel Gibson.
Sure, you have to like stand up, walk around and stuff.
Wear clothes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's numerous.
There's days where I just don't want to wear clothes, and it has nothing to do with being drunk. It's just like, this is not a day where I feel like wearing clothes. What's interesting is the very first movie, which also had the title "The Mutiny on the Bounty," was it was, I think, the first ever Australian movie ever made. It was an Australian-New Zealand joint film from 1916, a silent film, obviously, and it's a lost film, as a lot are from that era. I'm always interested in lost films. But it doesn't really say much about what the movie was in. Somebody named George Cross was Captain Bligh. That was Christian. Wilton Power is Christian. I don't know. But yeah, I think this was the first ever Australian movie ever made, and was well received in its time, but it no longer exists. It is a lost film. And there was one I'd heard of that one. The only one I hadn't heard of was the next one. There was a 1933 one called In the Wake of the Bounty, which was also Australian and had Errol Flynn. It was Errol Flynn's film debut, actually, so that's kind of cool. Errol Flynn playing playing Fletcher Christian. Yeah, Fletcher Christian. Sorry, I don't know why I can't say that. So that wouldn't be a bad one to track down someday. I mean, watching this one makes me want to watch the 62 one, because that's the only one I've seen a little bit of. I've seen some scenes of it, though I can't really remember. It's pushed together. But yeah, I do remember that in that one, yeah, they make it more like Christian's just sort of a heroic figure, and Bligh is just an evil bastard, and it's all about him heroically getting away from him and stuff. Whereas, this one's a little more true to life. So it's more like, I like sleeping with island women. I don't want to be in the Navy. or that kind of thing.
Right. I can so relate to that.
Yep.
Actually, no, I can't, but I can imagine that it wouldn't be any fun being in the Navy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess you can relate to the sentiment.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this movie was, it did okay at the box office and stuff, but it was sort of a quiet movie and then kind of forgotten. Somebody here from the New York Times was pretty harsh on it, calling it totally lifeless.
Wow.
Which I don't agree with. I think there's quite a bit of life in it. Nice locations, fairly good performances, all that stuff. Again, a soundtrack that you think wouldn't fit, but fits pretty well. It's to me, it's the best. I haven't seen all of his movies, but it seems like the best movie by a mile that Roger Donaldson did, and it seems like the only reason he was because he got to luck into somebody else's movie. Now I know Cocktail has its fans.
Come on, Cocktail now.
Yeah, Cocktail's fine. I don't have anything really against it. Mostly,
No.
I just hold against him how boring 13 Days was, and how awful Species is, and how stupid Dante's Peak was. Yeah.
It seems like you get to a certain point, you're just working for a living.
Sure.
You're not really trying to do anything that stands out.
I guess No Way Out was kind of a big film in its day. Kevin Costner, Gene Hackman. How many films are called No Way Out? I can think of like 3 off the top of my head.
The Getaway was okay, I thought.
I haven't seen that one, so I won't be too harsh on him. You're right. Okay.
I mean, it's not great or anything, but it's okay. I think all these are okay.
As you said, yeah. I mean, as many directors are big directors or already directors. There have to be sort of the in-between directors that are just, doing projects, doing films and stuff. So, yeah. And as I said, I can't really trace back how he knew Gibson, except for, again, perhaps the Australia, New Zealand connection where they just all know each other. But as you pointed out to me, Sleeping Dogs, his first film, was a film with Australian Sam Neill, who we did the other week on the Australian other water movie, Dead Calm.
That's right.
That's Sam Neill.
Which was that a New Zealand? That was Australian, right?
Dead Calm, yes. Dead Calm was Australian. Sleeping Dogs is a New Zealand film. I kind of want to watch it now.
Yeah.
Political thriller with Sam Neill. New Zealand plunges into a police state as fascist government institutes martial law after. Wow, that sounds kind of exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's because New Zealand's like one of those like little off to the side countries you never think about. It's wow, that could happen in New Zealand. I don't know. But yeah, I kind of want to track that down now. Plus, again, fan of Sam Neill. I've been singing his praises lately because of Jurassic Park and stuff.
Yep.
Good old Sam Neill.
I like Sam Neill.
But yeah, so of the people that they finally caught up to in real life, 10 of them made it back to England to be court-martialed. 4 were acquitted, 3 were pardoned, and 3 were hanged. So,
Oh wow, they
you
actually
got
did
you
hang
got
him. Okay.
yeah, you got to give the British Navy credit. Like, you think you would just call it a lost cause,
Of
But
course.
they're like, no, damn it, massive endeavor, go thousands and thousands of miles, hunt these men down, and all this stuff. It's like you find them, most of them are gone or already dead and stuff, but they got 10 of them and hanged 3 of them. So justice, I guess.
You would think there would be
Justice.
no way to find him.
Yeah. I know the world's such a big place and stuff, and there's so many islands and stuff, but they did. So in a way, I guess it does make me wonder. Is there a movie there, like a sort of an unofficial sequel to The Bounty? What would have been the second part of the one that Lean wanted to do? Instead of calling it The Bounty, you could call it Pandora, and it would talk about Pandora's voyage. I think that could be a movie, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I almost want to say that they could have maybe trimmed some of the beginning off of this film, made this like a tight, hour and a half, 90 minutes, and then use the beginning of the stuff when he gets back, and then with the Pandora in the second film, maybe could work.
Yeah.
Because it was a bit long, not overly long, but
I don't think it has that long of a start, though. Really, it does kind of get going. Like they don't spend too much time. Like I thought maybe they'd
yeah.
waste time like assembling the crew. They're out to sea pretty fast.
Yeah, well, maybe trim some of that down a little bit, but I don't know. It could be done, I'm sure.
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I think it is important to establish what life on the boat is like, and then have a good long time on Tahiti too, just for the compare and contrast and stuff. So it didn't feel too long to me, really. The only reason it felt long was I had a lot of trouble watching my version kept freezing and stuff, and oh man. I was watching a version at first that was working fine, but it was kind of pixelated and it was driving me crazy. So I looked up another one. I was like, here we go. This is better. And then it was like stopping every 5 seconds. So this movie is like 2 hours and 10 minutes or something. It probably took me like maybe an hour longer than that to watch. It probably took me about 3 hours and 10 minutes to watch it, which was really irritating. Although there was a part where I just went downstairs and did laundry. So that wasn't all buffering, but. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy the movie, but this latest viewing was a little bit frustrating. Once again, I'm just trying to see exactly how it worked. So the Pandora arrived in Tahiti because obviously that would be the place to go. And as we said, there were already 14 guys that were there, but they weren't part of the mutiny. But they were treated like they were part of the mutiny anyway because the captain Edwards didn't give a shit, and they were thrown in jail on the ship. They stay there for 5 weeks while he's trying to ask the locals and not find anything about where the bounty's gone. Then they go out to sail, bouncing around various southern Pacific islands, and they can't find it. Let's see here. On 29th of August, they ran aground on the Great Barrier Reef, and they had a bunch of stuff trying to keep the ship from sinking. This is when some of the prisoners escaped, including Haywood. Several of them drowned. A whole bunch of Pandora's crew drowned. So now you have a Pandora with a much smaller crew with 10 remaining prisoners. And they basically followed Bly's course and wound up in Kupang again. Then they spent 7 weeks there with the prisoners locked up in a prison in Dutch East India on a Dutch East India trading ship. Then transferred to Cape Town in Africa. Then they go to England. Then they go to So that's as far as they ever got. So they never did find the bounty. They never did find Christian, and it wasn't until many years later that again some American ship stopped there, found out who the people were. By then, Christian was dead. Everyone was dead except for John Henry, and then various natives they'd had with them and offspring they produced. But so yeah, there's some stuff in there. Another little historical detail that they made for the sake of drama was they made it again. Like I pointed out earlier, that they made it sound like there was a little more drama about whether or not he would be court-martialed for losing the ship, and in real life, it wasn't like that. One of the things they said in the movie is like, just you wanted to circumvent the globe, so you stubbornly tried to go, past Cape Horn. Well, that was what they were supposed to do.
Right.
That was the route they were told to do. Now, for this in the movie, they have that kind of the trying to do it again is what sparks the mutiny sparks the mutiny. Whereas in real life, they did not try to do it again. But they just, again, I guess they wanted to come up with a more convincing idea, like, oh, that's the last straw kind of moment. So that's what they came up with. So he's like, yes, we're going to. So Bligh wasn't actually that stupid or stubborn. He did not say, hey, remember how, like, we got caught in the storm and almost died? We're going to try to do that again. Like, he didn't actually do that in real life.
Let me ask you this: when they finally do get to whatever that island that they're looking for after they get Blythe off the ship.
Yeah, they went up on Pitcairn is where they finally settled. Yeah,
they set the ship on fire. Two guys start a fire at the bottom of the ship and it burns. What's going on with that?
Just so they can't be found, I guess.
So that was okay. That wasn't just like two guys like trying to make sure they couldn't leave.
No, I assume that was the plan. The way they're all standing there watching.
Okay.
I guess it was just because it was just so they wouldn't be found. Because I'm finding out here. So how they found it was the island had been discovered in 1767, but its exact location was never verified, so it wasn't on any of the charts. So that's why he picked it. And as I said, like in the movie, they wound up finding it almost through sheer luck and stuff. And let's see here. Yeah, it was set ablaze and destroyed, either as an agreed precaution against discovery or as an unauthorized act by Quintel, one of them. Okay, so that suggests that maybe somebody did do it just for the hell of it. I don't know, but anyway, they existed peaceably for a while, but it wasn't long before they broke into like factions and stuff. Particularly the fact that the Europeans were still exploiting the Tahitians and treating them like property, particularly the women. According to one of the accounts, the women were passed around from one husband to the other. So so it's not like these guys are like sympathetic heroes. Again, they were just sort of guys that saw like an easy life that they could take advantage of and exploit people with and stuff. So it's not like they're like the good guys exactly. But eventually, some of them get killed by Tahitians. It says in a carefully executed series of murders. And there's various accounts of what happened to Christian. One says that he was butchered with an axe. His last words supposedly were, "Oh dear."
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Those seem like appropriate last words if someone's going to kill you with an axe. Oh dear. But, I don't know how verified this is, but this is from some various accounts and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't until 1808 that they were discovered. An American ship called the Sealer came there and landed and found the community, but by then all the men were dead except for John Henry. But yeah, the perception of Bligh as an overbearing tyrant began when Edward Christian's appendix is blah blah blah. But anyway, and that's sort of what's endured throughout most of history, was the idea that it was just a big fuck up by Bligh, and it was all his fault, and he was just a tyrant and stuff. And I can't say for sure, but I like how this movie at least sort of again shows both sides and makes Bligh, fallible, but still not necessarily an all the way bad guy or all the way incompetent or anything like that. Because again, what is true is you can't overstate like how crucial his leadership was after he was set adrift. He was basically the reason most of those men did make it back alive. So he was a good captain when he needed to be. I don't know.
Yeah, it was apparently 3 of the guys survived. It was John Adams, Ned Young, and Matthew Quintal were the last 3 mutineers surviving in 1799.
Oh, it's John Adams. Sorry, I kept saying John Henry. Must have been John Adams.
And they, pretty common name, I guess. And they got Quintal drunk and killed him with a hatchet. And then apparently they used the ship's Bible to guide their way, and they taught the natives Christianity.
Of course. But like the movie and the real life story are kind of a good cautionary tale too, because it just sort of shows there's not really any perfect society or paradise or anything, because their paradise lasted for like a few months at most before they started like turning on each other, and obviously from the get-go they were mistreating people, and that wasn't going to stand, the way they were treating the women and stuff like that. So it's kind of proof that there really is no sort of like ideal society or ideal paradise or whatever, and if you try to go make it your own, you'll probably just screw it up.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a question in the chat.
I'm sure it's all about the movie.
I don't think you're gonna like it. Nightmare 4, Friday 4, or Halloween 4. Choose one.
I'm not talking about horror.
You got shut down. Cole shut you down.
I'm not talking about horror. I like horror, but no thanks. Not today.
Oh, man. Well,
not talking about horror or food.
Food is a big topic in there as well.
Always popular. It does keep you alive. Kind of makes me want to try a coconut again, I'll tell you. I remember I only had a coconut once in my life, and it's very early. I was 4. It was when I was in preschool. I don't remember, but one day our teacher brought a coconut in and showed us how to like break it and eat it and stuff, and I hated it at the time, but I was 4. So yeah. It's been 30 years. Maybe I should give coconut another try. I like coconut flavored things. I like things that have coconut in them. But the coconut itself, the meat, the milk, I should give it another go. I should buy one.
Man, I've gotten around like coconut water. I drink a lot of that. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I've had some of that. It's supposed to be kind of good for you. I would go through that when I drink that sometimes between I was doing like Taekwondo and stuff. Mm-hmm. Supposedly healthy thing. I should get some more of that. It's not bad.
It's like a natural way to get electrolytes, and
yeah,
that's a lot of potassium in it. So
it's one of my favorite smells, coconut. It's one of the great smells in nature is the coconut scent. To
just like break a raw chunk of coconut off, it's not that great by itself, but it is good in things, and
Yeah, I like chocolate with coconut. Good combination.
Mm.
There's a little food talk for you people.
Goes well with desserts.
I have no idea what breadfruit's like.
What is it called? Breadfruit.
Breadfruit. That's the crux of the movie.
God, that sounds disgusting.
It's a mission to transport it. But yeah, it's a whole. That's something I didn't even find out. Did they ever? This mission didn't succeed, but were they ever successful? Did they ever get breadfruit? Did they ever transport it and manage to grow it in the Caribbean? I need to know now.
Well, I know he didn't they throw all the plants off the ship?
Yeah, it did eventually happen. It says here the trees have been widely planted in tropical regions elsewhere, including lowland Central America, northern South America, and the Caribbean. So eventually, it did happen. Because it was a fruit that was native to islands, basically in Oceania, places like that. But yeah, it was successfully transported to the New World. Well, that's good. That makes me feel good, even though it didn't work out for the bounty. Even though the bounty failed, they still had to do it. They're like, that's too important to the Empire. The breadfruit must be brought to the colonies.
Ugh, it looks gross.
Yeah. Well, they only wanted it because they thought it would be cheap and easy to use.
Well,
Again, their original plan for it was to feed it to the slaves.
Right.
So it's not like they held it in like high regard, like, oh, this is great. This is something we can sell in Europe. It probably is shitty. They're like, this is cheap. This is cheap and easy to do, so we can give it to the slaves.
All right, another question in the chat. What's your favorite scene in The Bounty?
My favorite scene in The Bounty is when they first arrive at Tahiti, because it's so happy and full of tits.
Yep, there you go.
I mean, I can be artistic for some of these movies, but I mean, let's face it. It's a very awesome, powerful scene. with beautiful tropical weather and boats and waving flags and pounding drums and a lot of nice native tits.
You know what? This movie's rated PG. PG.
Wow. Yeah, because back in the day, that was acceptable.
I should have known, man. This would have been my go-to movie back in the day.
Because actually, the first time I ever saw, I never saw this movie all the way through for many years, but I did see at least parts of it as like a young kid on TV, and I assume they didn't just censor it all, but I don't know. Maybe they did. It's hard to remember.
Why does Jason keep renting this movie with Anthony Hopkins in it?
He really likes Anthony Hopkins.
He's like 12. Why does he like it so much?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, this is like 1780 something. Yeah, the Slavery Abolition Act was actually passed or first moved in 1783, but it took a long time because I don't think slavery was abolished in the British Empire till 1833. Okay. Slavery in the British and French Caribbean. Anglo-American slavery. Abolition. Yeah. What's funny is the French abolished it, and it was only earlier, but it was only abolished for like 8 years because Napoleon brought it back. So that's one of the great things Napoleon did. It's like, no, we need slaves. Bring it back. That's for the French, of course. Because at the time, the French had colonies in the Caribbean, too. But yeah. The Dutch is who everybody forgets about, though. I like how they wind up in the Dutch Indies. Everybody forgets about the Dutch. But man, even though they were small, they were all over the goddamn place. Yeah. They were as prolific as the English and the French. The Dutch were the first Europeans to set foot in Japan. The Dutch were way ahead of the curve when it came to completely exploiting Africa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whole Dutch Congo, that was them.
Oh, man. Everyone got their foot in the door on that one, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, give the Dutch credit. For a small country, they got around. They were, I mean, usually when you think of like, you know, European colonialism, you think of like the big countries, but the Dutch are right in there. But let's see that going on. We didn't actually figure out what our first movie is going to be. Because I guess now is a good time to say that, like, yeah, I know we've been teasing for a while that we're going to move on to like sort of our next big event, sort of as our fall. Like last year, we did a new Hollywood series. This series we're tentatively titling. We're not sure, but we think the title will be something like, I don't know, like the Masters series, something like that. And it's just going to be a series, several, maybe 10 or 11 episodes, each focusing on, you know, a big, really well-known, celebrated and acclaimed director. You know, of various countries and stuff like that is what we felt like doing. And to put a bit of a spin on it, for at least a few of the ones, try to do one of their films that's more or lesser known. Not necessarily like the big film they're most known for, but maybe a lesser one. And, you know, we've knocked around. We know most of the names we're going to do. We've gotten it down. There's maybe one or two left to add. But just to let people know, you know, one of them is Kubrick, of course. We've got Kubrick in there. We've got Kurosawa, Hitchcock. So, you know, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to start embarking on for our next episode. Will be that. And, yeah, over the next few days, Jay and I will try to narrow down which films that's going to be. And, yeah, because I'd like to give you guys more of a heads up what the episode is. So hopefully sometime this week we can announce on Twitter exactly which director the first episode is going to be and which movie we picked. But that is the big announcement, folks, is some sort of Masters of Film and stuff. I know we've had some people watch the show that have wanted to see us focus on some of these directors. And one was the Russian director Tarkovsky. Yes, Tarkovsky's in there. We'll do one of his films for sure and stuff like that. But yeah, we also are trying to cover different countries. So we've got Japan and Russia and France and stuff like that. So you can look forward to that because that is the next thing on the agenda. But yeah, I like doing water stuff. I don't know, just something. It's not too deep. Another pun, but you know. Just another fun thing in film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotta
dude, I
tread
wonder
lightly.
water. The only thing that's too bad is in the 3 films we covered, none of them had like well, there was sort of a sea monster in uh, Waterworld, but it's kind of a letdown of a scene because it's like not even important. It's like, look how crappy this sea monster is. It's so crappy that he just jumps into the water specifically to get food. It's like, you want food, I'll go get food. Like, a sea monster should be a big pivotal moment where everybody's freaking out, but he is just like, I'll go get that stupid sea monster. And then they just cut it, like they show him like stab it, and then it just cuts to him like throwing like meat on their fire or whatever. He's like, there, now you can eat.
$200 million, and it looked so bad.
Yeah, big CG mess of a thing too. But I will say, amongst movies that like affected me on the water level, one of the classics is definitely 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Specifically, of course, for the pivotal scene where they're attacked by the giant squid. Ever since I was a little kid, I'm terrified of giant squids, which make no sense. Because even if you're at sea, they're super deep down.
Right.
They're way deep down. So it's not like if I fall into the water, it's going to grab me in its tentacles or something. But
the big ones are way down.
But yeah, the big ones are way down. And it's one of the more fascinating things in nature is that sperm whales. Sperm whales hunt them. Mm-hmm. Sperm whales are amongst the deepest diving whales there are, and they dive to super deep depths specifically to find them and kill them, and they fight them. And it's so deep down, it's something that's never been captured on film. There's never been any film of a confrontation, but we know that the whale doesn't always win. But they usually win, and that's how they know, because they find them in their stomachs and whatever. That's how they know. So that's kind of interesting phenomena that I think a lot about is the giant squid and stuff. Yeah, there were a few submarine movies that obviously we could have done. I like Hunt for Red October a lot, but I've seen it a million times. You know, it's not really worth going over. The Enemy Below is an interesting one. That's a World War II one about, I don't remember, I think it's an American ship. It's an American ship that's being stalked by a German sub. Saw it a long time ago, I don't really remember it. What's another one? Obviously, Das Boot is the most famous one, but that's a super long German movie. I've seen it, it's pretty good. It just shows you how awful it would be to be on one. Man, Das Boot just like, ugh. That's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is put me in the military and then put me on a goddamn submarine. And then imagine being like the first submarines ever made. Imagine being in like a World War I submarine. The first submarines ever. Like, how could you even feel good about that? It's like, all right, man, you're going out to the massive ocean in the first ever submarine that this army's ever made. Have fun, you know.
You're going out in this giant water coffin.
Yeah, because the German U-boats, they were like one of the big scary things about World War One, because at the time the Allies didn't really have subs. The Germans were ahead of us on that one. And there's been reports, of course, you know, World War One and World War II. Thankfully, the fighting never landed in North America. But apparently a few times it came damn close because of German subs being sighted, including where I'm from, Cape Breton. They had guns set up and stuff because every once in a while there'd be a German sub off, you know, a few miles off the coast surfacing, like very close to, you know, where I live. Well, obviously, well before I was born, but you know what I mean. But yeah, Das Boot's the big one. Any other sub movies? Obviously, like U-571 is a more recent one. I saw it, but I don't remember. It's just a forgettable movie. Crimson Tide. That's Tony Scott. That one's not bad, but again, I don't remember it too well. It's Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, I think.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah.
It's forgettable.
Yeah, forgettable. Yeah. Tony Scott's movies to me, I remember we did a whole show on him on the other show. He's mostly forgettable for me.
I agree. There's a few I like a lot, but
and I mean, as I think I've said, like, I know everybody loves True Romance, and I like True Romance a lot too, but it's more or less Tarantino's movie. You know, I don't really put too much emphasis on Tony Scott's input in that movie. He directed it well, yes, but you know, it's I don't know.
Yeah, I like Last Boy Scout and True Romance. It's about it for me.
Yeah. He did what? Crimson Tide, and did he do Top Gun?
Yes, I think he did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could care less about Top Gun.
Yeah. I think Top Gun has aged horribly.
He did Domino, which I thought was okay.
Never got around to seeing it.
It's not too bad. He did The Fan with.
I hate that movie. I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Can't stand that movie. Is it Keira Knightley in Domino?
Yeah.
Nice.
Deja Vu.
Never saw that.
Man on Fire. He did a lot of stuff with
Denzel, yeah.
Denzel, yeah.
Man on Fire was okay, but again, it's not like I saw it once and I don't need to ever see it again. You know, that's kind of how I feel about most of his movies. Like they're okay, but I don't have any desire to rewatch them.
I mean, that's why he killed himself.
Oh.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Days of Thunder. He did Revenge, which I thought was interesting.
Haven't seen that either.
Kevin Costner, 1990. Kevin Costner, Madeline Stowe. It's not a bad film.
I say I don't like Kevin Costner, but it's true. I do like a few things he's in, most notably Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And as you said last week, I just thought he was so wrong for Waterworld. I know the whole thing was more or less his idea and his big thing, but I just felt like he was so wrong for that role.
You know, I forgot to mention that he had them like digitally move his hairline down. So, like, that was probably a large part of the budget right there.
I'd imagine. Oh my god. It's funny.
Got all sorts of weird seashells and earrings, and like there was a piece of like a circuit board like painted was his necklace.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. The ship's doctor drinks himself to death in Tahiti. That's actually a pretty funny scene. I remember that. They just find him dead, and there's three of them, and he's like, well, then bury him. And the other guy goes, you bury him. And he's like, yeah, you see to it. And there's just one guy standing there by himself, like, I guess I have to bury him. He's like, oh, that's very sad. Bury him. Like, they don't give a damn.
Well,
he's a shitty doctor. They would have done better, though, if they'd show him that, like, because in real life, his incompetence led directly to somebody dying. Like, they should have shown that. Make a little more sense why they don't give a shit that he's dead.
The scene right before was he was just like drunk off his ass, and like three natives are just kind of like poking at him.
Yeah,
he's like wallowing around in the water and stuff. But yeah, I didn't know what he died of. I thought it was so he just like died of alcohol poisoning probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was always just a drunk, and the captain was always yelling at him, like, "You're a sorry state. Go down to your quarters."
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of used to like what a lot of people have seen of the more quiet, calm, measured Anthony Hopkins. I kind of like seeing him barking at everybody.
Me too.
He's good at it.
I don't know. I think he's done a lot of questionable stuff in the very recent years.
He's just one of those fantastic actors that has done awful movies. I mean, there's a lot of them. Like, he did Bad Company with Chris Rock. That happened.
Well, that was a while back too. What was he in recently?
The most recent thing he was in I saw was, I think it was a Netflix original movie called Blackway. He's pretty good in it, but it's a very bland, forgettable movie.
Of course, he was in Westworld, which I thought he was good in.
I loved him in Westworld.
He was actually in Thor Ragnarok. I'd forgotten about that.
Oh yeah, he's in all the Thor movies because he's Odin.
He was in the newest Transformers movie. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, because they're just like, we need to add another layer to this. It's like, this will get us some recognition.
We need an old British guy in here.
Yeah, we need him to like give us like some narration, or he's either going to narrate or give a bunch of exposition. Like, that's what they need him for. He's going to talk because it has something to do with what, like something back in the times of like the medieval times. I don't know. Never saw it, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it
It
was.
just brought him in to legitimize things. They're like, this will make it sound good. But what's funny is I saw like he loved doing that movie. Like he knows it's crap, but he loved it because that's what everybody says about working with that guy,
Michael Moore or
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
I don't know how fun Michael Moore would be to work with. Your guy was getting kicked out of places and people yelling at you. I wouldn't want to work with Michael Moore. Everywhere we'd go, people would just be like, we know you're here to film us and make us look bad. I would hope that since Michael Moore's got fairly successful, he pays the people that work with him fairly well. But anyway, yeah, Michael Bay, like I saw like within the last year just some interview with Anthony Hopkins, and he just said how much he loved doing Transformers and how fun it was and how awesome he thinks Michael Bay is and stuff, which I can appreciate. You know, he's done plenty of good serious acting. He's entitled to just some fun, stupid role.
Yeah, sure.
I don't hold that one really that much against him, but I just mean, there's just some terrible choices he's made in his career where it's like, I might as well be in this.
I mean, maybe it's just paycheck. I mean, he's the type of guy that I see like making that shitty movie, but then going to the theater, and like acting in the theater for like 2 years straight,
Yeah.
That's kind of like what he, seems like that's what his passion is. Acting.
Yeah. So yeah, the earliest movie I saw him in was, I forgot he was in A Bridge Too Far. He was in A Bridge Too Far, and then Magic came out the year after that, and he was in The Elephant Man in 1980. This in 84. And there's some stuff in the 80s that I don't recognize or know at all. And then, of course, the big role in Silence of the Lambs. Oh yeah, he was Van Helsing in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I hate that movie. I think it's a tire fire, but he's okay in it. I recently saw Chaplin, which isn't bad.
Is that Robert Downey Jr. in that?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen it either.
I love The Edge. I love that movie. Him and Alec Baldwin in the Alaskan wilderness. He's the original Zorro in Mask of Zorro, which is a movie I like a lot.
Wow.
He's in Titus, which I think is really good. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when it was fashionable to just do like modern day versions of Shakespeare plays. Titus was another one, but I mean, it was really good. I like Titus quite a bit. Then of course he was in Hannibal. Hearts in Atlantis was bad. Bad Company was awful. Red Dragon was awesome, but whatever. Alexander was terrible. Now we're getting into really questionable stuff. Fracture was bad. I liked Bobby a lot, but that was a big ensemble piece. He was just one of many in Bobby. Did you see Bobby?
I don't believe so.
Really liked that. It's weird too, because it's like written and directed by Emilio Estevez. Like baby.
Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, I really liked that movie a lot. It's cool that he got all those people too. Like a lot of names in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's Hrothgar and Beowulf. I like Beowulf. The Wolfman, I get, is a stupid bad movie, but I still kind of like it. I had to turn I had to turn that off. It was so bad. He's not in as many terrible things as I thought.
Yeah. Did you ever see Hitchcock?
Don't think so. Oh, is that the one where it's about how he like starts getting obsessed with one of his actresses?
I guess it's basically he plays Hitchcock.
Yeah.
During the filming of Psycho in 1959.
Yeah, isn't it like a big part of it? He gets like obsessed with Janet Leigh.
Probably. I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. So I haven't seen it either. So I think that's part of it, though. Oh, man. He was in Noah, another movie I had to turn off. Darren Aronofsky again. Excuse me. One more. Oh, shit. Come on. Where is it? I hate it when that happens. That was supposed to be 2.
Like his insight.
Thank you. But yeah, love Anthony Hopkins. I hope he has more years left. I'm glad he's still acting.
How old is he nowadays? Got to be getting up there.
Oh yeah. Got to be in his 80s. He's 80. He's only 80. I thought he was a
Okay.
bit older. He's 80 now. I thought he was maybe 83, 84.
He looks good.
Oh, yeah. I think he takes pretty good care of himself. But, yeah, he was also in The World's Fastest Indian, which I didn't see, which was also directed by this director, the Roger, whatever his name is.
I haven't seen it either. It's I've seen it on a lot. I've just never actually watched it. It doesn't sound like something I would like.
Nah, I don't really care about it. That's also based on the true story, but not a true story I'm not interested in.
Just because it happened doesn't mean it needs to be a movie.
Yep. No. Again, the main reason I think it got to be a movie is just because it's like, well, it happened in New Zealand. It's like New Zealand's small, not a lot has happened, so here's something that happened in New Zealand. I don't know.
Oh, Indian motorcycle. Okay.
Yeah, he's like some crazy old guy that starts setting like land speed records because he can, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a movie.
It's streaming for free on Prime if anybody wants to watch it.
Mm.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, love Anthony Hopkins. Even in the bad stuff, he's still usually pretty good. He's obviously a very good actor. I mean, and I don't just say that about every like classically trained British guy. I don't just fall for that. I really do like him.
As someone who's been around that long, generally it's true though.
Oh yeah, a lot of them, like Ian McKellen, like he's awesome. You know, they do the real stuff.
I would almost say like guys like Terrence Stamp don't get enough respect.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Lesser known guys.
And I know before we talked about Alan Rickman, how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad he and Anthony Hopkins never did a movie together.
That's true.
Anthony Hopkins is like the only celebrated British actor that didn't wind up in the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, that's true. Makes you wonder why. Was he busy doing Hannibal movies the whole time?
No, not really. It's funny. That's one of the funnier things they have about like on the Honest Trailers thing. I watch those, but one of them I think it's just the Harry Potter series. You know, when they talk about things they have, and one of the things it's like features it's like what is it? Award-winning or whatever English actors saying nonsense, and there's just a bunch of shots of them, saying like the spells and stuff like that.
That's funny. I need to check that out.
Yeah, it's like it's like Maggie Smith going Avada Kedavra, and because I mean, yeah, they really check the boxes there. It's like Maggie Smith and whoever the hell they got to play Dumbledore, whatever his name was, and I mean, friggin' Kenneth Branagh's in there. It's easy to forget that he's in there for one of them, and of course, our Snape. But yeah, of course. But yeah, pretty much any sort of well-known, celebrated British actor got at least into at least one of those movies, except poor Anthony Hopkins.
Has he been knighted?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I called him Sir in this earlier. Yes, he has been. He is Sir.
Okay, I thought he had been. Maybe I just assumed.
For the record, he's Welsh.
Yeah.
I like the Welsh because one of my favorite bands is Welsh, Manic Street Preachers. Wales. Oh, here's one of the terrible movies he did. I skipped over. Meet Joe Black. Oh my God, that's an awful movie.
I never saw it.
That's Brad Pitt too. That was like supposed to be a big deal. People hated that movie.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah, and so did I.
I always get that confused with The English Patient because it's right around the same time.
Yeah.
The English Patient's the one that people like went to and cried, right?
Yeah. But it's long and boring. It's funny. I was looking at The English Patient today because the book it's based on the book The English Patient. I was looking up books that won the Booker Prize, and that's one of them. The Booker Prize is well, it used to be just for like British fiction. But now it's just anything English language. The last two winners were actually American, but before that it was mostly like British. Although there were exceptions and stuff. Although they usually had some tie to it. Like I think I've only read like 2 of the books on the list, and one of them is Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, who I guess was born in India but brought up in England, etc., etc. But anyway, I guess we can wrap. I don't want to subject people to too much rambling and stuff like that. But yeah, just to reiterate, we will let you know very shortly, within the week, I'm sure. We'll figure out what our first episode is going to be for the Master series or whatever. If we can come up with a better name for it, we will, and stuff like that. But yes, so yeah, one of those big name directors, and I don't mean big name box office. I mean big name critical or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Although most of them were successful and stuff like that. But yeah, and as we said when we did this show, we also wanted to be able to touch on films from other countries and stuff too. So this is a good way to touch on some of the celebrated directors from other countries too. So we're definitely looking forward to that. We've been planning for a while, but we haven't gotten to narrowing it down yet. So that's going to be the work we're going to be doing over the following week, and we will let you know as soon as we can on that. So really looking forward to that. So that's going to do for now. I hope you guys enjoyed the little water series. I don't know, some stuff with boats. Tried to get some variety in there. I don't know. But yeah, that's going to do it. So that's The Bounty.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot.
We'll
I'm
see you next
talking
time.
funny because I still feel like this other sneeze is in me. So I'm just like talking really fast before I sneeze and stuff. But yeah, I think we can finish without me sneezing or
And
wiping
just
my nose.
stay tuned to the Twitter, and we'll let you know what movie we're doing next week. And hopefully we'll do that for every film, let you know a little bit of time.
Yeah, we're gonna try to give you more of a heads up this time, like, 'cause this is one where we're gonna do a little more planning.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much, guys, and yeah, looking forward to that. We'll see you again really soon. All right, see you guys later. Peace out.
All right. Thanks.